Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True. Coming up, Justin Hausman and I are going to talk about the surprising news to break over this weekend, about Camber Outdoors shutting down, Hoka continuing to defy the odds, and how they're growing, and the proper way to wrap up your car to prevent a rodent attack. That's after today's open, where I take a hard look at the state of REI. Oh, and don't forget, guys, producer Dave's here too. But before we get to that, a few housekeeping items. I saw you leaning in. Please follow and rate The Rock Fight wherever you're listening on any podcast app. We really need you to leave that 5-star rating. It really helps the show out. Send us your feedback by sending an email to myrockfight@gmail.com. And if you're an Apple Podcast listener, please leave us a written review. And if you do, send a screenshot of your review to myrockfight@gmail.com, and we'll send you a Rock Fight and Gear and Beer sticker. Do all that stuff for us, because we do all this for you. All right, let's start the show. This past week, REI announced their Vendor Partner of the Year awards, and this is something they hand out annually, and in their words is given to brands who significantly impact aspects of their business over the past year. Personally, I honestly can't remember the last time I read anything good happening at REI. Between their union-busting stance, their financial struggles, and criticisms about where they are planning to open new doors, there seems to be less goodwill extended to REI than there used to be, and I've never been a huge REI fan, but even still, they seem to carry an outdoor authenticity when I look at them as a consumer than other sporting goods chain stores didn't or couldn't carry. But that might be changing. Last week on the show, retailer Wes Allen cited some new statistics of how the rising growth in more casual outdoor participants combined with the decline of more core participants, as noted in the OIA's annual participation report, is benefiting specialty retailers and places like Dick's Sporting Goods and potentially hurting a shop like REI. And like I said in that same episode, which I'll link in the show notes, this makes sense to me. I may not have been a big REI fan historically, but I like their stores, and I've spent plenty of money at REI over the years. There was definitely a time when I would have gone to REI given the choice between them, and maybe going to Dick's or Academy, Big Five, or any other sporting goods store that carried a decent assortment of outdoor stuff. And even including the more hunt and fish focused shops like Cabela's and Bass Pro. And maybe it's more fun to shop at a specialty shop, but REI still had the outdoor shop vibe more than any of the other places I just mentioned. There was also a sense of, you can't find this stuff at Sports Authority when it comes to REI. Also, RIP to Sports Authority. We miss you guys out there. This has changed, though. For one reason, I feel like this is because the industry has leveled out. Technical proficiency in outdoor products just really isn't special anymore. It's the norm. If you listen to our Gear and Beer podcast, Sean McCoy said as much from Gear Junkie that there's an expectation that stuff just works now. Before, if you'd go to REI, the products were mostly what you'd find at a specialty shop compared to the lesser than bargain brand stuff you'd find at a general sporting goods store. And I feel like this was also proven on the trail, too. There was an association with what the stuff you would buy at an REI versus a big box sporting goods store. If I saw anyone out hiking in like Under Armour apparel and Nike sneakers, they kind of outed themselves as not being legit outdoor. Clearly, they weren't shopping at a place like REI. And now that gap is closed. For one thing, big outdoor brands, they sell all of their stuff to the sporting goods stores. So there's nothing really special about the assortment anymore. And the cheap stuff at any stores we're talking about, that performs better than it used to. Are there products and categories that you only find at REI that you won't find at other more general sporting goods shops? Sure, of course, but not many. You'll find niche stuff like climbing gear and, backcountry expansions to snow sports and things like that. Maybe they don't have skis at a Dick's, but, there's a lot of the same stuff in both shops now. But even then, these more core outdoor sports aren't part of REI's growth plan. This past spring, it was reported how REI was putting its expansion and profitability plans solely on one category, and that's run. Now, that strategy is sound from the point of view that it's the category that it has the most participants, continues to grow, and continues to have a moment with the expansion of trail and ultra running, but also makes REI even more like everyone else. And let's remember that REI was founded by mountaineers in the Northwest. They don't have bronze Nike Air Maxes as the door handles to their shops. They have ice axes. Their heritage is in alpinism. And they're rapidly cashing in on those legit outdoor chops to be another spot to buy running shoes and synthetic t-shirts. I think they were already the boring player in the outdoor scene, but I also now really feel like it feels like they're working real hard to join the status quo by playing where everyone else plays. And I say that while also endorsing their run strategy. They should capitalize on run. But it feels like they're taking the path of least resistance rather than go back to what allowed them to gain their clout in our space to begin with. Their in-house line was once a differentiator for its quality and lower price point against the more premium outdoor brands. That's pretty much the same with no discernible differences from the names sitting next to them on the shelf. And that sort of all leads me back to who they picked as their vendor partners of the year, because it was pretty much a chalk pick in every category. Osprey won Vendor of the Year, Ultra won for footwear, Arc'teryx for apparel, Big Agnes in hard goods, and Petzl in action sports. And I suppose that's because of their climbing chops. It's hard to think of REI as a purveyor of action sports products. But my thought when I read all this was like, wow, way to go out on a limb, REI. You've been the French vanilla of outdoor stores for a long time. But versatility and differentiation is the hallmark of our outdoor biz. So maybe you take your vendor award and find interesting new products and brands to highlight, because losing authenticity is a tough thing to come back from. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that there's also a factor here is that big brands are struggling across the board. Columbia also released numbers last week and all of their brands except for Mountain Hardwear were down 8% in Q2. Newell, who owns Marmot and Ex Officio, also reported poor earnings. They were down 18% in Q2. And Mountain Hardwear performing well, I feel like supports my point, because while they are operating above their competition from an inventory point of view, there's one other thing that Hardware did this year, and that was to invest in its brand and messaging. And that work is resonating with consumers. I'd love to see REI look at what someone like Mountain Hardwear is doing, instead of just trying to become another version of Dick's, but also, hey, we sell, a few more brown boots. So I want to bring in Justin and producer Dave at this point. Justin, what do you think about the theory that the playing field between REI and other big box dealers is leveling out? This is something we explored with Wes last week. I kind of wanted to get your take on that.
How do we know that it's that and not? Are we talking in person or does online count too?
That's a good question. I think we're talking more about the in-person experience. Wes had cited some statistics he'd gotten from and some analysts who are looking at where people are shopping. And it seemed that there is, and I kind of anecdotally was talking about how there's a Dick's closer to my house, and I would not think twice about going to Dick's for the same reason I think about going to an REI.
I mean, without having any numbers or anything to back it up, I would assume it's got to be more of a brick and mortar versus online than it is an REI versus specialty or REI versus general big box stores. I mean, I haven't been to a Dick's in years, but I mean, it's a good point. If you can get like a outdoor research shell at Dick's or at REI, why go to REI if you're already going to Dick's to buy your kids a new pair of cleats? Because in a lot of ways it's probably the same. Something, actually, I hadn't thought about this before, but something like Dick's makes a lot of sense because, I mean, for a lot of people that are in the sort of casual outdoor category are probably in the casual sports category too, and so they need things like whatever Dick's sells, basketballs and footballs and stuff, and you lump it all in together. There's less of a reason to go to REI.
You're on the precipice of this there with your kids, right? You have a 5-year-old. And even my 18-year-old, I took her to get new running shoes a few weeks ago, and I was just walking around Dick's, and I'm like, usually you think, I'll go to REI. I want to pick up fuel, or I want to pick up a headlamp, or some sort of outdoor staple that maybe you misplaced. It's all there.
You can get that at Dick's too. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not all with the depth. Their headlamp category probably doesn't have the same depth as going to an REI. But why would I drive to the one in Encinitas 25 minutes away when there's one 5 minutes down the street?
Well, so that's interesting. So locally, we have a small chain called Sports Basement here, and it's basically this sounds like it's a Dick's. You have. That's where I would go to get anything, a baseball bat. If my wife wants, she lap swims, so if she wants some swim goggles, we go there. But also, I could go get any backpacking food, any backpacking supplies, and honestly, it's going to be just as good as the REI.
It's a great
just
comp.
as good.
That's a really great.
And they have rental programs, so I can go rent skis and all that sort of stuff. And I could buy if I wanted to, some Adidas track pants. So in fact. I never really went to REI when we lived in San Francisco because Sports Basement was closer and I liked it more. I never felt like it didn't have enough. I mean, the thing is someone I feel like you and me are probably in this core, but we're also in the core participant category. I'm still going to go to an REI before I'd go to something like a Dick's just because I'm used to it. And it's speaking to me more than a Dick's would be. But I mean, as we've seen, apparently core participant numbers are down. And if you're not core, you don't care about the cachet of where you're going. And you may as well, you're probably going online first. And then, so yeah, I mean, what I'm wondering now is if like, does REI like start to pare itself down and become like a more of like a cool, small, indie vibe, like it probably started out to be, like, is that what's coming?
That'd be great, wouldn't it? I think that's ultimately what I was kind of getting at with like the thing I just went through is it's like all signs point to leaning into the broader audience versus kind of what brought them to the party.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're the ones who are at the most risk of getting hurt because Wes was talking about like there's ways that they can respond on a small level to like their shop. This information about what the assortment they bring in, the things they do in their store. They sounds like the specialty shops are in a position where they can do more to kind of evolve with the market and Dick's is going to be Dick's. Sporting goods is sporting goods. And if the brands are going to sell all the same stuff to Dick's that they are going to REI, it's kind of like at some point something's going to give and someone's going to decline. Dave, what do you think about the point I made about the brand stuff? Like as a guy who spent his career in the brand side of things and doing creative work, like why do you think like the hardware piece of it that was interesting? That's like the one brand we've heard good news about in the last few months, except for one we're going to talk about later in the headline section. But I don't know. Is there anything that REI could learn from the Martin Hardware surge?
Martin Hardware.
Yep.
I love that name.
I know Martin. Do you know Martin Hardware?
Well, I have an opinion that, I think that Hardware has done some of the best rebrand work in the space, that it does have a unique feel and energy to it. And I think that REI suffers. If you look at all the brands that are down, what they all have in common is that they all sound the same. That you can pull imaging and messaging from pretty much any one of those brands, lay them out together, mix them up, and you'd be hard to tell who's who. And so I think that does impact this overall trend. I think REI is also fighting some headwinds in terms of just, like we said, this changing retail space, changing buying patterns of where we get our stuff. And, like you said, if you can get the same shell in 3 different places, I'm not going to be so specific about where I get it. So I do think that that's going on. I think though we did undersell something, that Petzl is an absolutely bold choice, Colin, for a brand of the year.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that same thing.
Nothing says authentic action
brand,
sport like a headlamp brand. So I just absolutely think.
Do we know how, like, what does it mean to be the vendor of the years? I mean, they sold the most stuff.
It means that they're the
ones that they preferred,
the brands who significantly impact their aspects of their business.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, what? Maybe no. But that's what if no small fun brands did?
Then you lie.
I want to say this, but I don't want to say this. It's it's which.
What if it was Puff and Drinkware, Colin?
It's what brands paid the most stocking fees to have their items pushed up on the wall?
Well, I think there's some of that too. We do know that REI charges for in-store clinicking. I mean, there are certain. I'm sure there's a lot of criteria. I think it's a valid question, though, Justin. You're right. I mean, like, what is the criteria here? And Dave, to your point, like, these aren't bad brands. I understand the choices.
Bold.
To me, it immediately resonated with all this other stuff we're talking about with REI, and it's like, yeah, okay, you're not doing anything other than like, let me just make sure we give more attention to the brands that people already come here to shop. And just kind of, it's another like one element of the challenges I feel like with
I
REI.
guess to me it just seems like this is almost inevitable in a certain way. I mean, combined with what we've seen from the pandemic, the sort of post-pandemic slowdown on virtually every category in the world that had anything to do with people like having free time or going outside more. So that's
Right.
That's obviously one thing. But two, it's like, it just feels like it got big. Like REI got so big, and like it. Yeah. There's a lot of outdoor participation, but it's just like that's REI. I guess it just feels like I want my outdoor store to be kind of small and funky and personal. And if it's not that, then I just don't really have any reason to go there. I guess like that's how it seems to me, and it just feels like there's probably just there's too many brands as it is. There's too many places to get stuff as it is. Like
that's it. I guess it's ultimately it just seems like they need to respond in some way, right? Because to your Dick's, it might be boring, but it's like there's variety there. Like to your point, like, hey, your daughter's going to want to play soccer in a year and a half or whatever, and then you're like, oh, and I also need this thing for our camping trip. Great, like it's kind of one-stop shopping. They have it all now. That what I need for basics. If you go to a Bass Pro, isn't Bass Pro the one that has that giant like aquarium in it, and it's like it's a cool shopping experience. You walk in, you're like, this is dope. I'm not even a hunter or a fisherman. I just kind of want to hang out in this shop. Especially to your point, cool, funky outdoor stores. There's a reason. There's the community. Like this is kind of where I, as an enthusiast, a core person, I jive with this. Why do you go to an REI? It's like, so why? How do you answer that question? And right now, I think it's getting harder and harder to answer that. Like, oh, you should get your run shoes. Well, what if you're like renegade running in the Bay? You're like, you're going to go to REI?
Well,
like,
it also feels like that
like
seems like, I get the connection. It's an outdoor sport, but you know what else is basketball or, or golf, you got to wonder if that's being pitched in like meetings. Like, what if we put some basketballs in here?
Well, you missed the one that's the most obvious, which probably will end up there, and that's pickleball.
Yeah. Or totally. Or like ultimate Frisbee golf stuff or whatever. Like,
right. I know plenty of outdoorsy folks who play Frisbee golf, and like that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
But what Dick's doesn't have is like the experiences, and like, that to me seems like a cool thing that they're doing. Well, I also feel like, there's opportunities to like really lean into like, I've talked about this so much in my own work, and probably on the podcast, to lean into being like a third place. Like I don't know how this works if you're the REI that's in like Dallas, because I think there is one in Dallas, and you're like, okay, there's no like what are you gonna do outdoors and there? Like hunt? Like there's not much to do. Trail run, I guess. There's your runners, or your bikes.
Oh man, we're gonna get letters from people in Dallas.
Send them. I mean, I'd be stoked if I was wrong, but fishing and hunting and running, whatever. But like, point is that like, okay, so I don't know. Like, I went to I had a funny moment on a family road trip a couple weeks ago where my daughter was car sick, and so we decided to pull over to go to Whole Foods because we needed to go to grocery shopping anyway. I happened to know that the Whole Foods that was nearby had a tap room in it. Like I hadn't been to it, but I knew they were building a tap room in this Whole Foods. I'm like, well, my daughter's sick. She needs to take a break from the car. We can at least like pull in and like maybe grab a beer or something like that. And so it ended up being like, honestly, I don't understand why. It's like one of the best tap rooms I've ever been to. It's super rad. Like the vibe is great. The selection is wonderful. You can like order oysters from the like Whole Foods seafood counter, and they just bring them over to you. Point is though, is like like I would hang out there anyway. Like if I lived nearby, I'd probably go get beers there, even though it's inside of freaking Whole Foods. So it's like, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is an opportunity for REI to like really lean into like having like, I don't know, like a base camp cafe or whatever. And you have like movies, and you have meals and wherever you have like speaker series or whatever. And like really like Dick's isn't going to do that. And so, like, or like lead into like fucking wildlife presentations, like really like own the fact that you are like a core like outdoor brand. And like how cool would that be if like you could take your kids down, there's gonna be a falconer that's gonna like show off some local falcons, and like you can get like some what maybe you're selling like the backpacker meals, you prepare them, or I don't know, something like that. Like that could be interesting, and that'd be way more of a reason for me to go there than to buy something online.
That kind of to wrap it up, because we got to move on. But like that's exactly kind of what I was thinking, right? Like when I read the participation report, my gut was like, this is going to impact specialty retail. Like this is where the core isn't going to shop at their specialty shops. And then talking with Kelly Davis from the OIA and Wes, and hearing like, actually, no, REI might be the one at most risk. And then to your exact point, that's exactly what they should be doing. Like become invaluable to your community. Like I said, it's Whole Foods. This isn't the local natural like grocery store. And you're still like, I'd hang out here. People will get over their biases against the corporations real quick if you make the experience real good, right? Yeah. So I think it's exactly, and then you kind of read the terrain of what REI is saying and doing, and like what are they known for in the last 6 months? Well, labor issues and union busting, going deep into run, and awarding these brands. So I think it's a missed opportunity, and ultimately they're the ones probably at most risk at it versus anybody. Well, it's time for our weekly segment, More with Thermore. This is our weekly segment presented by Thermore, the original ingredient brand that has been providing insulation solutions from Italy since 1972. And Justin, we haven't heard from you in a while, and it's the middle of the summer, and you're up, as everyone knows, in Northern California. We don't need more wildfires we actually need more wildflowers, not more wildfires. But like, what is going on in NorCal right now?
We are blessed. Like for whatever reason, this year we're kind of blessed to be out of the smoke pattern.
Yeah, it's all blowing east.
Yeah,
so
like we've definitely been in the teeth of it before, but it's actually been it's interesting. It's been definitely like some insanely hot days, but for the most part, like we haven't really seen the fires. We haven't really been threatened with fires. There haven't been any that close to us. But
That's
like
good.
weirdly, like the last few days, or actually kind of like the last week, it's been like overcast and kind of almost like coastal. Like it's kind of nice. I mean, today actually, as I say this, this fog is just broken up and it's getting sunny, so it's probably going to be like 99 degrees tomorrow. But
speaking of fog, it is that time of year where just down the street from you, it's quite chilly.
Yeah, I was in San Francisco yesterday, and I don't go to the city as often as I probably should, you know. And having lived there for like 12 years, I mean, it's crazy. It's like 15 miles away, but it's a whole different world. And like we went in to go to the Golden Gate Park yesterday with the kids, and like as soon as I get into town, I'm like, oh yeah, everyone's in like full length parkas and like beanies because it's summer in San Francisco, and it's the coldest place on the planet. And if you haven't experienced it, it's worth doing. I mean, it really is. It's this weird psychological thing where you know it's only like 60 degrees, but because I think your brain is aware that everywhere within like a 10-mile radius outside of San Francisco, it's 98. Like it feels colder. Like you're just aware that something is different and it shouldn't be like this. And it's mind-boggling how cold it will feel.
Well, one outdoor brand you don't see in the U.S. all that much that would be good for a cool summer in San Francisco is 66 North. And right now, you can head to 66north.com and get ahead of the back-to-school rush for winter coats and pick up the Hekla.
Hekla.
They're an Icelandic brand, I must say, Hekla, which uses Thermore Eco Down and will keep you warm this upcoming winter. Like we told you before, 100% post-consumer recycled Eco Down is the sustainable alternative to feathers and is the go-to insulation for more casual garments like the 66 North Hekla. Stay warm using the best insulation from Thermore this upcoming fall and winter. So you can head to 66north.com to learn about the Hekla. You can head to thermore.com to learn more about Thermore. And don't forget to do more in the outdoors with Thermore.
I wonder how you actually pronounce Hekla.
Dave is our resident 66 North expert. He's going to come on and tell us how we pronounce Hekla.
Hekla.
Oh.
No way. I refuse to. It's got to be like Herky.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. My Icelandic.
There's a ya in there somewhere.
Right. Do you have a runway in specific that you're going to be wearing your Hekla jacket on? That would be my question to you. Awfully
a runway.
Yeah, awfully fashionable.
It is quite stylish.
Yeah, it is very stylish.
It is.
You know,
you can only wear it with moon boots. Apparently, that's how you have to. Let's run through some headlines. We're going to start off with the bombshell that dropped per SGB just this past Saturday. According to their board and leadership, Camber Outdoors will cease operations next month in August of 2024. Founded in 1996 as the Outdoor Industry Women's Coalition and then rebranded in 2016 to Camber Outdoors. It's a nonprofit organization to, quote, equip partner organizations to implement best practices in workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion. According to the SGB report, the reason for their closure is continued industry headwinds, combined with the fact that outdoor industry companies are moving beyond the focused workplace tools that Camber traditionally provided. That's a quote directly from the article. Obviously, a big blow for an industry that still has both gender and race diversity issues. I'm going to have Teresa Baker on the podcast this week. We're going to be talking to her, Justin. And so we'll be able to get deeper into this as we learn more. But I wanted to at least get our instant reactions to this news. I don't know. I kind of think it's hard to put DEI in the outdoor industry as the same place as sustainability and greenwashing. You know, the positive is a POV. The positive point of view being that brands know they need to do more to make the world a better place given their constituency. And the cynical view being a lot of lip service to keep consumers off the scent, that your good intentions aren't sincere. I don't know. Where do you guys kind of land on this? This is sort of we don't know a lot yet about what exactly is going on behind the scenes, but it definitely seems like a blow.
Was Camber basically just like a consulting agency? I mean, is that what is that what they did? Like you hired them to come in and I mean, I know Camber Outdoors, but I mean, if you're a brand, you basically hired them to come in and kind of run your DEI program. Is that more or less how that worked?
Yeah. So they deliver resources to their partners, which assuming are mostly outdoor brands, at the leadership level, so that the employees, I'm reading from their website, can enact systemic organizational change, and organizations can reach their full potential for workplace.
Well, I guess my first thought is that I mean, the same way that like a struggling brand, like the first thing they'll do is like cut marketing budget. I mean, like I just wonder if this is just a just a symptom of brand struggling overall. Like this probably doesn't seem like something that necessarily is like a, if it probably seems like a luxury rather than a necessity for a brand that might be treading water or even taking on water. That would be that's the first thing I would think of. Or that they were just successful enough to where like brands hired their own DEI officers and they don't need to, they don't need Camber's help anymore. But I suspect it's probably more of the just trying to cut budget.
Look, there is the industry has changed a lot. There's a lot more awareness of the necessity of some of these issues. So some of the trainings maybe that were being done in the past were just kind of about bringing these issues to the surface at brands, so that they could understand and start to take them on. So that's one element that's probably not as needed in the same way. I think there is an awareness. However, implementation is the issue. It's still not being followed through with. Like you said, brands are cutting these resources from their own companies. So if there's not a third party to fill in, and they're cutting their own staffs, now we see the cause for an alarm. I also think that it's just more of a signal, that the industry, they're not supporting this. It's the same thing with, some of the other, if industry doesn't support these issues collectively, then it just signals that it's not important to the industry. And I think that's a bigger issue. Just what message does that send?
Yeah, I think that's where I think all that's correct. I did reach out to Darren Josie, who's been on the pod before. David and I have worked with him before. His company, First Seed Sown, supports BIPOC founders, and he's been very involved in this space. He commented there was a wave of positions and resources created after the 2020 social justice movement in the wake of the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, among others. But it's really regressed because, to that point, Justin, you're right. Positions and departments have been quietly eliminated. A lot of that due to some of the challenges like we were just talking about, even in our REI conversation at the top of the show. But I mean, I guess the thing I come back to here is kind of to Dave's point. You should be maybe loudly eliminating them and at least bringing attention to why and what your plans are to continue this work. I mean, this is an ongoing problem in the outdoor space of, it's very white and male dominated. And if we're going to continue to see real change here, it's like, well, understanding that there's the tyranny of business, but you also, what are you going to do instead of just sort of like hope you don't get called out for making these changes?
Just more of something to hide behind. The tyranny of business also shows that businesses that are more diverse and that actively try to get different viewpoints into their decision-making do better, right? I mean, I think that's just, that's something now that is just a fact. So maybe some of our struggles as an industry are related to we're talking to ourselves in the same way we always have. And until we really start to understand the importance of distinction and broader viewpoint, we're going to continue to struggle.
I mean, that's why I made the correlation between it and sustainability. And like, that's the stuff that I'm always kind of going on and on about on the sustainability front is the brands who are like, oh, we talk about how great we are and look at these things we're doing, but then not actually doing the extra work to make it greener, right? It's just like they want the good coverage when it suits them, and we're just not going to talk about the dirtier side of our business.
Colin, we issued a press release. We have it all under control.
I do want to read a quote from the article from the CEO of Camber, Tiffany Smith. And this is what she said, kind of, I believe, in relation to the announcement that they're shutting down. She wrote, "We are incredibly proud of the progress made over nearly 3 decades. The landscape of DEI in the outdoor industry has transformed dramatically, and it has been an honor to be a part of this journey. We celebrate the growth of numerous grassroots and industry-wide organizations that Camber works closely with that are now leading DEI efforts, from the Outdoor Industry Association, People for Bikes, Outdoor Afro, Latino Outdoors, to the Running Industry Diversity Coalition. These groups and others are driving significant change. Our legacy is the vibrant network of organizations and leaders now championing this cause." I mean, there are, if you pay attention, there are many more groups that are trying to get more and more folks into the outdoor. On another podcast that Dave and I made, we had Earl Hunter from Black Folks Camp 2. These things are happening all over the place. But I just want to ask you guys and honestly, acknowledging that this is from 3 white men on a podcast, and is it a podcast if there aren't 3 white men on it, I guess is really the question. But do we agree that the landscape has changed dramatically? Does it feel like it has?
Landscape in what way?
The diversity landscape. I mean, we wuld have said outdoor retailer. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, like when you say
smaller,
landscape, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the people we actually see outdoors? Are you talking about media representation? Are you talking about all of that?
I think all of that. I mean, Tiffany's point was the landscape of DEI in the outdoor industry has transformed dramatically.
I would say anecdotally, yes. I mean, at least in the sense of what I've seen, what advertising looks like, what marketing efforts look like. I mean, that to me seems wildly different than it did even like 10 years ago. Yeah. So I would say yes, but I mean, like, I don't know. But I don't know about behind the scenes. I don't know about, statistics at brands. I don't know about employment numbers. I don't know about that kind of stuff. But in terms of like, if you just like walk into an REI, for example, or if you had been put in a time machine and went from like 1995 to today and saw like what the outdoor industry ads and stuff look like, you would think, I mean, it'd be a massive sea change, completely different. And I think that even conversations that you have with people about, things like, what people's outdoor experiences should be like and or can be like, and kind of a broader opening of that sort of conversation, that's changed a lot too. Mm-hmm. Where it's, it used to be, it kind of be frowned upon to say that like the outdoors are for everybody, kind of, like, because there was rules that we had in place and blah 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 blah. But now it feels like it's kind of the norm to just be way more like open and accepting of anybody wanting to go outdoors for any reason, I suppose, unless we're talking about, side by sides and ATVs, because nobody will ever be happy with those folks. But you know what I mean? Like, it just feels like that. Like, I would say yes, in a lot of ways, things have changed in a giant way. But I don't know. That's just from what I've seen.
This is something to make sure we bring up with Teresa this week, and not to tease our audience and say make sure you come back for the second part of this conversation, but come back for the second part of this conversation with Teresa Baker. I think, because you're right. I think on the face, obviously it's different, but that's also, is that just things are, take a cynical point of view? Is it just, are we just marketing it better? Are we marketing it to a broader audience? And I would guess, and again, it's a guess. I'm not throwing any accusations around, but if you took a look behind the scenes at most outdoor brands, it's still pretty white.
Yeah,
is what
I think this
guess.
is the difference: representation and opportunity. Right? Clearly, we're starting to understand the importance of representing a diverse group of people to be more welcoming to this space and to try to have folks see themselves represented in what they can do and aspire to and participate in. But is that translating to opportunities within the industry itself? Leadership opportunities, even entry level, how... because that should be the fruits of representation. We should start to be able to see people understand that there's opportunities to make careers within this, and that can become a real thing too. So it's important. It's an important step. Just not sure that it's moved to the opportunity phase. And I do think groups like Camber and these kind of very classic kind of outdoor consultancy aspect is still important. There's still a need for it. So I guess that's the not simple answer to a not simple question with a pretty right or wrong aspect to it.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye. I'm sure we'll learn more about this in the coming days. I don't think anybody expected this to come, or it's kind of and landed in everybody's lap on Saturday. So, and like I said, we'll talk to Teresa about it. We'll definitely be reporting more on this as we learn. Next story, it does seem that there's at least one brand, other than Mountain Hardwear, that is thriving in our over-inventoried outdoor and athletic world these days. This past
Puffin.
week. What is it?
Puffin?
Puffin Drinkware. Crushing it out there, everybody. The most authentic outdoor brand of all time. No, this past week, parent company Deckers announced quarterly earnings for the running footwear brand Hoka. It came in way ahead of projections, and in fact had Hoka up 29%. And they also mentioned that UGG is up 14%, so good on you, UGG. But focusing on Hoka, this thing's an absolute rocket ship in a category that is also a rocket ship. Like I talked about in the open, running is kind of a safe bet for retailers and brands, and apparently Hoka is the safe bet for the choice of consumers. Just personally, I have to think this is some sort of the levelty of the maturity of the cool new kids. Like Ultra is also performing very well, apparently, and both Hoka and Ultra are now over 10 years old. And as of the news as of late for like a Nike and Adidas, they've had their own PR problems. They're maybe kind of looking a little bit older and tired in the running category. I look at as sort of the brand du jour. But if you look at product reviews, it doesn't seem that it's resonating with runners like Hoka does. It probably seems a little more fashion driven. I want to get into the brand side with Dave. I want to ask you about that. But Justin, I just kind of want to start with you because you just recently bought a pair of Hokas. When you went to buy a pair of trail running shoes, what drew you to Hoka, the Hoka Mafate, instead of going to like a Brooks or an Asics or some sort of more established run brand? Was there something specific about it, or was it just like, I just want to try that out?
Good question. Honestly, they look like they work. They just look like they work. Like the big thick soles.
That's a great answer.
The kind of the color vibe that I see people with them on the trail, they just look like they work. I mean, I that's not to say that Brooks don't, but every time I've ever seen a pair of Hokas, I've thought, I bet those are comfortable to run in. Like every single time, just looking at them.
Right.
That really is it. That's as simple as that. Like,
You are right. There's
can't-
something about, there's a shelf appeal where
Yeah.
you could tell it's a running shoe. It doesn't look like a hiking shoe or something. It's a running shoe. But
Yeah.
it's not. It doesn't look like a Pegasus or an Asics or a Brooks. It looks that much different.
It looks like there's a reason to try it. Like it looks
Interesting.
like there's a reason to try it. I mean, it really does come down to that. I mean, you can't overlook the fact that like everybody seems to wear them, so they clearly they must work. But that really does. It's as simple as that.
Dave, is that kind of the answer? Is that what you think right there?
Well, there's a definitely couple forces here, but let's start on that one. It's just kind of preparing notes for this. It's exactly the same thing that 66 North is bringing to the party, right? They have a clear design language that you just cannot miss. And I think you just described it really well there, Justin. They look like they work, right? It's not just about big and comfy. The running credibility aspect, layers onto that. Color is also such a strong driver of preference.
Totally.
And they have led color. They've almost flipped the script a bit in terms of who leads the apparel or the footwear in terms of color kind of direction. And I feel like that's been a big part of their language of what makes a Hoka. Those I'm calling it muted brights or vivid matte colors, right? There's just you can tell from afar away that is a Hoka piece from its color and from, like you said, the fact that it just looks luggy and comfortable and it's going to work. What I called it, it's a statement of authenticity and credibility through their running, and then their comfort and color are fashionable. So you put those together and that really creates kind of this broader movement. But before you get to that, Colin, you're talking about the maturity of the category. Definitely that's a part of what we're seeing. People are kind of a little tired of their choices. But let's be clear, Nike had some unforced errors that really allowed brands like Hoka and On to come in, right? They really overskewed and really relied on their classics business and sportswear, all about their kind of retro vintage product. They gave up specialty placement for their D2C strategy, and that really allowed brands like Hoka and On to come in, as well as the other running brands, and get shelf space that wasn't available to them now. And so now Hoka's been able to build a core running brand off of this that they have always leaning into specialty and leaning into race day. They're a competitive running brand. They have athletes. They focus a lot on that, but it's not such, kind of over competitive that it can't be relatable. There's definitely a balance between the running enthusiast, the competitive athlete, and this everyday relatability, active comfort kind of lifestyle. And to me, that's they've really hit on all three sides. And Nike kind of gave them the entree, and they've just consolidated on it. And I think that's what you're seeing is just this growth over growth because they're doing it performance and lifestyle. It's pretty simple when you just cut it down to that kind of binary. Are we hitting these two levers? And they certainly are.
It's going to be interesting how it shakes out because as much as I'm sort of looking at On with sort of like a little side eye, they also announced, was it 2 weeks ago, that they're working on their spray-on shoe, 3D printed shoe. Like, so they're
Right.
these brands of the moment, if they continue to innovate and do interesting things, especially with color running is huge, and it's like I'm sure all the other running bands are still doing well, but it's tired, right? Like this is the new stuff now, and the brands and what's that going to mean for future generations? Like, okay, my wife bought a pair of Hokas, and then Lily went and got my daughter went and got a pair of Hokas. It's just sort of like, how does that pay forward as you look ahead, and how do you plan for that if you are one of the more tired older brands?
I mean, Hoka will. Become a tired old brand.
At some point,
yeah. It's that's just how the nature of the
how
it
goes.
Yeah.
Who hasn't? Who's never become tired and old? Coleman Lanterns.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Good question. God. Louisville Slugger.
Oh fuck yeah.
Rawlings.
Actually, they probably had a moment where they were tired and old when
No,
Di Marini was coming out with like double
Martini has
wall.
entered the chat.
You never see
Right.
Louisville Slugger anymore like, in the bigs. I don't even know.
That's a good point.
They're always.
It's just you're speaking to my childhood
brands.
when you say that. It's probably
Totally.
why. Dave, what's an outdoor brand that's never gotten old and tired?
Marmot.
Because they started old and tired? Is that why?
Yeah.
Poor Marmot. They're taking a lot of shots on this podcast lately.
Yes, they are.
Speaking of marmots,
Oh my gosh.
I saw 2 articles this past week on this topic and figured we get the mayor of the Sierra, Mr. Justin Hausman, to weigh on this.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I know you have an event you have to speak at, the little ribbon cutting up Sonora Pass later this afternoon.
That's right. That's right.
According to RV.com, rangers at Sequoia National Park are advising visitors to wrap their vehicles in a tarp when they are away from their car. If not, marmots may fully fuck up their car. Apparently, the play is to drive on top of the tarp, then wrap the tarp around your car and tie it off on the roof to seal off the undercarriage and to avoid the large rodents from moving in and feasting on engine components and fluids, which apparently they're attracted to the smell of. Justin, have you ever done this? Have you
Yes.
pulled up and seen it? You've done it yourself?
I've done this myself. And if you are backpacking in certain parts of like especially Sequoia doesn't have a ton of entrances, but like some of the higher up like trailheads, like you'll see all the cars will be tarped, or most of the cars will be tarped.
Is this a California marmot thing? Because I remember going to Paradise like on Rainier. It's a big parking lot. There's marmots in the parking lot. I don't recall seeing wrapped up cars, in Washington.
Interesting. That's a good question. I'm actually not sure about that. I do remember thinking this in the my wife and I were in the Pyrenees a few years ago, and it's like marmot heaven. And I remember we parked our rental car. I'm like, should we wrap it? But I don't know. Maybe it's a thing about the ones in Sequoia. The real zone, Mineral King, which is like I hesitate to even say its name on here, just because it's this very special place, and it wouldn't do well with 12 million people like traipsing around Mineral King. But Mineral
Which
King
is our
like
audience. We have 12 million people who listen to the
Right.
podcast. So
Right.
it's smart.
Most of them are marmots.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the marmots are getting excited, like yeah, bring them in. But like Mineral King is especially notorious for this, and so but yeah, like when I spent that summer many years ago in the Sequoia Kings Canyon zone, my truck was tarped every time I was there.
Wow. Do you do it now? Like when you go camping and stuff,
no,
do you do it?
Because for some reason they're more concentrated in the Southern Sierra, and I don't really know why that I'm not sure. They exist in the Central Sierra too, but like it's not really a thing up here. I've seen it though. I have like every once in a while you'll see people that will do it.
Yeah.
But down there it's pretty common, and they and I've also seen marmots in like I've seen a car getting attacked by marmots before. Like I've been at a trailhead and you hear like, what is that going on? You see like kind of like marmots like up underneath like the wheel wells, like.
This seems like
getting in
the classic thing where you talk yourself out of doing it, even though it's pretty easy, and then you're like, "Fuck!" when you get back to your car. Like that was
dude, it's the worst. And like what's interesting, so this never happened to me with marmots specifically, but I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, my wife and I were on a camping trip in Santa Barbara, and we drove down there, and in my Tacoma that I had at the time, and drove home, and like. The day after we got back, I went to go somewhere in the truck and like started it, and it was just like weird, and like all the lights were on, and like kind of ran, but something was wrong, and I was just like, what the fuck? And so I like took it to the dealer, which I would not normally do, but like everything was on, like all the lights were on, and they hit me up later that day. They're like, yeah, looks like you got like a rat or something got up into your wiring harness and like just chewed the shit out of it. It was like $6,000 to fix. Thankfully, here's something that you will be interested to know if this happens to you with marmots. If you have comprehensive insurance, it's covered and it's considered like an attribute of nature.
So my marmot insurance plan idea is not going to work.
Wild, right? So like that, it was covered, but it depends on the animal. But like I guess Toyota's notorious for using soy based. They probably all do now, but like soy based like coatings in some of the wiring coatings, and like it smells sweet, and so they like to chew on that. And then like marmots, it's always been thought are attracted to the smell of antifreeze, and they don't really exactly know where it is, so they just chew through anything to get to it. But they'll chew through like most like a lot of like the important parts of your brake lines are steel, but like there's rubber too, and they'll chew through brake lines. They'll chew through just about anything. But yeah, I never really thought about the fact that it does seem to be like a southern Sierra phenomena, but it's no joke.
Well, Dave, in the trails of Forest Park in Portland, do you guys wrap your cars to keep the tweakers out? Like, what happens up?
Yeah.
No comment. I don't want to give away my secrets.
But yeah, don't mess around with that. Do it.
Wrap your car, everybody.
It's not easy, by the way.
What size
wrapping your
tarp do you
car.
need for that?
Big one.
Yeah,
Wow, you're right. Like, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, big one. You don't like a lot of times. Like you can, if people are, you can. Well, it depends. I mean, I've seen people that just wrap up the front because they really just want stuff in the engine, but
Yeah.
like. It's a pain in the ass.
just
You can
drive
get you can actually like I went down this rabbit hole when that happened with my truck. You can buy like you can buy little like electronic things that you put on your battery that emit like a frequency that the rodents don't like. You can a lot of people use mothballs. They'll just put mothballs in the engine compartment. That works for mice. I don't know about marmots.
See, the simplest thing is just to wrap up your car.
Or just not drive. There,
Yeah,
you know,
there
if,
you go.
if there's any other way to get there, you just do that.
Just walk.
Yeah, but those little bastards.
Well, lastly today, we want to give ourselves a plug and let you know that your favorite outdoor gear podcast is back. A new episode of Gear and Beer went up last week, debuting our pal Sean McCoy from Gear Junkie. This week, Meg Carney joins Justin, producer Dave, and I to offer you a buying guide to PFAS-free stuff. And looking ahead, we're going to be featuring folks from brands and other journalists as well as some episodes where Justin just reviews gear. So be sure to follow and rate Gear and Beer wherever you get your podcasts. That's all I had today, boys. Anything else to touch on before we punch out? It's Justin's birthday.
Yeah, oh boy.
So we got to, everybody send your if you send a well wish to Justin, I'll send you a sticker.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Send a happy birthday message to myrockfight@gmail.com with your address, and I'll send you a sticker
That's nice.
to celebrate Mr.
Are you going to
Hausman's
share? Are you going to share those with me, Colin?
22. Of course I will. It's his
All right,
22nd
thank you.
birthday. He's very young.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Started having children very young in life.
His 22nd birthday after his 24th birthday.
Well, The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. Our producer today, David Karstad. Art direction provided by The Camping, Sarah Gensert. For Justin Hausman, I'm Colin True. Thank you for listening, and here to take us out like he always does, it's Chris DeMakes. Gonna sing the Rock Fight fight song, Will. See you next time, Rock Fighters.